The bull charged. Everyone screamed, but Nelson didn't move. Mike, 2,000 pounds of raw power, stopped inches from his face. The ranchers yelled to run, to grab a weapon, but Nelson just stood there staring into the bull's eyes. Because what he saw in those eyes wasn't rage, it wasn't violence, it was something no one expected from an animal labeled too dangerous to live. What Mike did next changed everything science thought it knew about animal intelligence, and the reason he'd been abandoned, it wasn't because he was dangerous, it was because he was too smart, and that terrified everyone. This is their story. The Texas sun hammered down on the abandoned Henderson property like divine punishment. Nelson Porter stood at the fence line separating his newly purchased ranch from the foreclosed land next door, watching something that didn't make sense. A massive bull, easily 2,000 pounds of dark muscle and power, stood in the overgrown pasture, methodically working at something near the old barn. Not grazing, not resting, working. Nelson was 45 years old, former automotive engineer from Detroit, widowed 2 years ago, and still figuring out why he'd left everything behind to buy a struggling ranch outside Lubbock. Grief did strange things to people, made them search for meaning in empty places. He'd been on the property for 6 weeks, slowly repairing fences, learning about cattle from YouTube videos and patient neighbors. The Henderson place next door had been empty for 3 months, bank-owned, waiting for auction. Or so he thought. But that bull was definitely there, and he was definitely doing something unusual. Nelson grabbed his binoculars, the expensive ones he'd used for birdwatching with his late wife Rebecca. Through the lenses, the scene became clearer and more disturbing. The bull wasn't just standing near the barn. He'd somehow maneuvered a metal trough next to a water spigot, positioned it perfectly underneath. Now he was using his horn to turn the handle. Slowly, deliberately, with precision that seemed impossible for an animal. Water began flowing into the trough. Nelson lowered the binoculars, blinked, looked again. The bull drank deeply, then, and this is what made Nelson's engineer brain stall, carefully turned the spigot off with his horn, preventing waste. What in the hell? Nelson muttered. He'd read about animal intelligence, seen videos of crows solving puzzles and dolphins using tools. But a bull operating a water spigot with conservation instincts? That wasn't normal bovine behavior. That was problem solving. That was reasoning. Nelson walked the fence line, getting closer. The bull noticed him immediately. Dark, intelligent eyes tracking his movement with unsettling precision. No aggression, just observation, assessment. The animal was in poor condition, ribs slightly visible, coat dull from neglect, but still powerful, still magnificent. A heavy chain was attached to a collar around his neck, connected to a post that had been pulled partially out of the ground. The bull had dragged it everywhere he went. Nelson pulled out his phone, called his neighbor Tom Davidson, a third-generation rancher who'd been patient with Nelson's endless questions. Tom, there's a bull on the Henderson property. Big one. Chained up, looks abandoned. Tom's voice crackled through the speaker. That'd be Mike, Henderson's prize-breeding bull. Spent a fortune on him, then couldn't handle him. Bull was too damn smart. Kept escaping, kept outsmarting every containment system. When Henderson went bankrupt, he just left Mike chained up. Been there maybe 2-3 months. 3 months? Nelson's voice rose. How is he still alive? That's the thing. Nobody knows. Somehow he's been getting water, finding food. Some folks say he's been raiding their gardens at night, but nobody can figure out how he's traveling that far with that chain. Animal control won't touch him. Says he's technically still Henderson's property, until the bank processes everything. Where's Henderson now? Oklahoma, I heard. Didn't leave a forwarding address. Didn't care enough to take the bull or arrange for him. Just abandoned everything. Nelson felt anger rising, the same anger he'd felt watching corporate executives make decisions that destroyed people's lives in Detroit. Carelessness, cruelty disguised as business. I'm going over there, Nelson said. Nelson, don't. That bull's dangerous. Henderson said he attacked him. Did he, or did Henderson attack first? Nelson hung up before Tom could argue further. He grabbed bolt cutters from his workshop, a bucket of grain, and climbed through the fence. His heart hammered. This was either compassion or stupidity, and he wasn't sure which. Mike watched him approach. No pawing the ground, no aggressive posturing. Just watching, calculating. Nelson could see intelligence in those eyes that made his skin prickle. This wasn't looking at a dumb animal. This was looking at someone thinking, evaluating, deciding. Nelson stopped 20 feet away. "Hey there, Mike. I'm guessing you've had a rough few months." Mike's ear twitched. "Listening. I'm going to put this grain down here. Then I'm going to try to cut that chain off your neck. I need you to trust me just for a few minutes." Nelson set down the bucket, slowly approached with the bolt cutters. The bull didn't move, didn't flee. He stood perfectly still as Nelson got close enough to smell the animal. Earthy, wild, alive. The chain was heavy-gauge steel, rusted but still strong. The collar had rubbed the bull's neck raw in places. "This is going to make noise," Nelson warned, as if the bull could understand. "Don't panic." He positioned the bolt cutters on the chain, squeezed with all his strength. The metal resisted, then suddenly gave way with a sharp crack that echoed across the empty property. Mike flinched but didn't bolt. The chain fell away, hitting the ground with a heavy thud. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The bull was free, could charge, could run, could do anything. Nelson held his breath, suddenly aware of how foolish this was, standing alone with a 2,000-pound animal that had been abused and abandoned. Then Mike did something unexpected. He lowered his massive head, gently nudged the grain bucket toward Nelson, and stepped back. Not submissive, not aggressive, almost like offering to share. Nelson felt something break open in his chest, the same feeling he'd had when Rebecca smiled at him the last time before the cancer took her voice. Recognition, connection, understanding between two beings who'd both been left behind by a world that didn't know what to do with them. "You're not dangerous," Nelson said softly. "You're just tired of being treated like you don't matter." Mike's eyes held his, a gaze that felt impossibly human, impossibly aware. Nelson made a decision that would change everything. "Come on, let's get you somewhere safe, somewhere you don't have to prove anything to anyone." He walked slowly back toward his property, didn't look back, didn't call out, just walked, trusting something he couldn't explain. Behind him, after a moment's hesitation, Mike followed. The two of them crossed onto Nelson's land as the sun began its descent, a widowed engineer who'd lost his purpose, and an abandoned bull who'd been punished for being too intelligent. Neither of them knew it yet, but they'd just started a journey that would challenge everything people believed about intelligence, connection, and what it meant to truly understand another being. Sometimes salvation isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's just one broken soul recognizing another and saying, "You're not alone anymore." Nelson woke at dawn to find Mike standing at his bedroom window looking in. Not threatening, just watching, like a neighbor checking to see if you were awake. The bull's massive silhouette against the rising sun should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt oddly comforting. He'd spent half the night researching bovine intelligence on his laptop, scientific papers, farmer forums, veterinary journals. Everything confirmed what he'd suspected. Mike wasn't just smart for a bull. He was exceptionally intelligent, possibly genius level for his species. Nelson made coffee, walked outside with 2 apples. Mike approached slowly, accepting the fruit with surprising gentleness. Up close, in morning light, Nelson could see the scars, not just from the chain, but older ones. Burns, cuts, marks that told stories of people trying to break him through pain. "They hurt you because they didn't understand you," Nelson said quietly. Mike's ear twitched, eyes focused intently on Nelson's face. "I know something about that. People hurt what they can't control." He spent the morning observing. Mike didn't just wander randomly. He explored with purpose. Tested every fence post, not looking for weaknesses, but understanding the boundaries. Examined the water trough, the feeding system, the barn structure. Learning his environment like Nelson used to learn factory systems. Around noon, Tom Davidson drove up, concern etched on his weathered face. "Nelson, folks are talking. You took Henderson's bull?" "Henderson abandoned him. I freed him." "That's still theft, technically, and that bull's dangerous." "Watch." Nelson walked to the gate mechanism, a complex latch system he'd installed last week. He opened it slowly, deliberately, making sure Mike could see every movement. Then closed it, opened it again, closed it. Mike watched intently, head tilted slightly. "What are you doing?" Tom asked. "Teaching. Or maybe he's teaching me." Nelson stepped back. "Mike, you want to try?" The bull approached the gate, studied the latch for a long moment. Then, carefully, used his horn to lift the lever, push the gate open, walk through, and, this is what made Tom's jaw drop, pull the gate closed behind him and lower the latch back into place. That's not possible," Tom whispered. "It's not possible for a normal bull. But Mike isn't normal." Nelson opened a notebook, sketched the gate mechanism. "I've been documenting everything. The water spigot yesterday, the gate today. He doesn't just memorize. He understands cause and effect, mechanical advantage, spatial reasoning." Tom shook his head slowly. "Henderson used to beat him. Said the bull was defiant, wouldn't follow commands. Tried everything, cattle prods, confinement, food deprivation. Because Henderson treated intelligence like rebellion." Nelson's voice carried an edge. Mike didn't need breaking, he needed communication. Over the next week, Nelson established routines, not to control Mike, but to create a language between them. A bell meant feeding time. A whistle meant something needed attention, hand signals for direction. Mike absorbed everything, responded not with obedience, but with cooperation. Partnership. Nelson's daughter Rachel called from Detroit, worried. "Dad, people are saying you're losing it. Living alone, talking to a bull like it's human. He's not human, but he's not just an animal either." Nelson watched Mike carefully move hay bales, stacking them efficiently near the barn. "Rachel, in 30 years of engineering, I solved complex problems. But I never connected with something the way I'm connecting with Mike. He sees me, really sees me. Dad, grief does strange things. This isn't grief. This is discovery." He paused. "Your mother used to say I only understood machines, not hearts. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe I just needed to meet someone who communicated differently." That evening, a truck pulled up. Henderson, back from Oklahoma, face red with anger. "That's my bull. You stole my property. You abandoned him, left him chained for months. He's worth $15,000. You're giving him back or I'm calling the sheriff." Mike, who'd been grazing peacefully, lifted his head, saw Henderson, and for the first time since Nelson met him, the bull's demeanor changed. Ears back, muscles tensed, eyes showing fear mixed with rage. Henderson grabbed a cattle prod from his truck. "See? Aggressive, dangerous, needs discipline." "Stop!" Nelson's voice was steel. "You're not touching him. He's legally mine until the foreclosure," Mike charged. Not at Nelson, at Henderson, but stopped 10 feet away, a clear warning. The message unmistakable. "Come closer and find out what happens." Henderson stumbled backward. "You see? Vicious animal." "No," Nelson said calmly. "Traumatized animal protecting himself from his abuser. There's a difference." He pulled out his phone, showed photos of Mike's scars, the chain wounds, documentation of abandonment. "I've already contacted animal welfare services. You want to involve the sheriff? Let's do that. Let's have them see what you did." Henderson's face paled. "This isn't over." He drove off, tires spitting gravel. Nelson approached Mike slowly. The bull was still tense, breathing hard. "It's okay. He's gone. You're safe here." Mike turned those intelligent eyes to him, and Nelson swore he saw something impossible. Gratitude, trust, understanding. That night, Nelson sat on his porch, Mike lying peacefully in the nearby pasture. The stars overhead were brilliant, the same stars Rebecca used to name for him. He felt her presence somehow, in the quiet, in the connection he'd found with this remarkable animal. His phone buzzed. Email from a livestock intelligence researcher at Texas A&M who'd heard about Mike through Tom's wife. "Mr. Porter, I'd like to study your bull. His cognitive abilities may be unprecedented. Would you be willing to participate in research?" Nelson looked at Mike, peaceful under the stars. What do you think, buddy? Ready to show the world what you can do? Mike's ear twitched, listening, always listening. And somehow, Nelson knew the answer was yes. Dr. Caroline Bennett arrived 3 days later with equipment that looked more suited for a neuroscience lab than a ranch. Portable cameras, cognitive testing apparatus, and a genuine excitement that reminded Nelson of his early engineering days. I've studied animal cognition for 15 years, she said, setting up near Mike's pasture. Dolphins, elephants, primates, but bovine intelligence at this level? If your documentation is accurate, Mike could change everything we understand about livestock consciousness. Mike watched the setup with his characteristic intensity, but kept his distance. Trust, Nelson had learned, was something Mike gave carefully. He won't cooperate if he feels tested, Nelson warned. He needs to understand why. Caroline paused. You talk about him like he's a colleague. Because that's what he is. Nelson approached Mike slowly, showed him the testing equipment piece by piece. Caroline wants to understand how your mind works, same way I wanted to understand engines. She's not here to hurt you or control you. She's here to learn, your choice if you want to participate. Mike studied the equipment, then Caroline, then Nelson. After a long moment, he walked forward, choosing to engage. The first test involved a puzzle box with food inside. Standard protocol. Most cattle would push randomly until it opened. Mike examined it from multiple angles, tested different components, then systematically worked through the mechanism in under 2 minutes. That's remarkable, Caroline whispered, recording everything. He's not using trial and error. He's analyzing structural logic. The second test was more complex, a maze with multiple dead ends and one correct path. Nelson walked it once while Mike watched. Then they reset it. Mike navigated it perfectly on his first attempt, but then did something unexpected. He walked it backward, proving he'd memorized the spatial layout, not just the sequence of turns. Caroline's hands trembled as she took notes. This is beyond pattern recognition. This is abstract spatial reasoning. Some primates can't do this. Over the next week, Mike demonstrated abilities that shattered conventional understanding. He solved problems requiring multi-step planning. He understood delayed gratification, choosing larger rewards later over smaller immediate ones. He even showed signs of self-awareness, recognizing his reflection and using it to inspect parts of his body he couldn't normally see. But the breakthrough came during a memory test. Caroline showed Mike a sequence of colored panels, then scrambled them. Mike had to touch them in the original order. He succeeded with sequences up to 8 items, exceeding most cattle by 6 items. But then he did something that made Caroline stop breathing. He touched the panels in reverse order. Then alphabetically by color name, even though he'd never been taught color names. He was demonstrating multiple memory encoding systems simultaneously. He's not just intelligent, Caroline said quietly. He's showing metacognition. He's aware of his own thought processes and can manipulate them intentionally. Nelson, do you understand what this means? It means everyone who tried to break him was trying to break something precious. Caroline's research drew attention. A livestock industry magazine requested an interview, then a university journal, then news outlets. Suddenly, Mike wasn't just Nelson's bull. He was a phenomenon. With attention came problems. Henderson filed a lawsuit claiming ownership. The bank that held his foreclosed property claimed Mike as an asset. Animal rights activists argued Mike should be in a sanctuary, not on a ranch. Tom visited with bad news. There's a hearing next week. Judge will decide who owns Mike. Henderson's lawyer is arguing you stole valuable property, his property. Nelson felt cold dread. Mike's not property. He's a sentient being. Law doesn't see it that way. Not yet. That evening, Nelson sat with Mike as sunset painted the sky orange and gold. They're going to try to take you back, put you in a situation where you'll be controlled, exploited, or locked away for protection. Mike stood close, his massive presence somehow gentle. I won't let them hurt you again. I promise. Nelson's voice cracked. Rebecca used to say promises were sacred. that you don't make them unless you'd sacrifice everything to keep them. So that's my promise, Mike. Whatever it takes. Caroline called late that night, excited. I have an idea. What if we argue for legal personhood, not human rights, but recognition that Mike's cognitive abilities warrant legal protection beyond property status? There's precedent with great apes in some countries. Would it work in Texas? I don't know, but it's worth fighting for. Mike's intelligence deserves recognition, not exploitation. Nelson looked out at the pasture where Mike rested peacefully. An abandoned bull, too intelligent for the world that created him, and a widowed engineer who'd found purpose in protecting something extraordinary. The hearing was in 5 days, and Nelson knew that whatever happened, he'd fight with everything he had. Because some connections transcended species, transcended law, transcended everything except the fundamental recognition of consciousness, looking into consciousness and saying, I see you. You matter. The courtroom in Lubbock smelled of old wood and tension. Nelson sat at the defendant's table, Caroline beside him with folders of research data. Across the aisle, Henderson and his lawyer looked confident. Property law was clear, precedent overwhelming. Judge Margaret Rivers, 60 years old with sharp eyes, reviewed the documents. Mr. Henderson, you're claiming ownership of one bull, designated as Mike, currently residing on Mr. Porter's property? Yes, Your Honor. That bull represents significant financial investment. Mr. Porter took him without permission. Mr. Porter, your response? Nelson stood, hands steady despite his racing heart. Your Honor, I didn't steal Mike. I rescued him from abandonment and neglect. Mr. Henderson left him chained for 3 months without proper care. Henderson's lawyer jumped up. My client experienced financial hardship. The bull was temporarily unattended, but remained his legal property. Temporarily? Nelson's voice rose. 3 months chained with wounds from that chain? Surviving only because of his own intelligence? Judge Rivers raised her hand. Dr. Bennett, you've submitted research regarding this animal's cognitive abilities. Summarize for the court. Caroline stood, professional but passionate. Your Honor, Mike demonstrates cognitive abilities unprecedented in bovine species. Problem-solving, abstract reasoning, self-awareness, metacognition. He's not just intelligent for a bull. He shows intelligence comparable to great apes, cetaceans, even young human children in certain domains. That's absurd, Henderson's lawyer scoffed. He's livestock. Valuable livestock, but livestock nonetheless. Is he? Caroline pulled out her tablet, showed video footage. This is Mike solving a complex spatial puzzle. This is him demonstrating delayed gratification. This is him recognizing himself in a mirror, a test that most animals fail. This is consciousness, Your Honor, not simple animal instinct. The judge watched intently. Remarkable. But legally, Dr. Bennett, intelligence doesn't grant personhood. Otherwise, we'd have lawsuits from every dog owner claiming their pet deserves rights. I'm not arguing Mike deserves human rights. I'm arguing that his level of cognition warrants protection beyond simple property classification. There's precedent internationally. Certain great apes have been granted legal personhood in Argentina, some rights for dolphins in India. This is Texas, not Argentina, Henderson's lawyer countered. Property law is clear. Judge Rivers leaned back. Mr. Porter, even if I found Mr. Henderson guilty of animal neglect, which would carry fines and restrictions, it doesn't change ownership. You'd have to return Mike or purchase him at fair market value. Can you afford $15,000? Nelson's stomach dropped. His savings were depleted from buying the ranch. No, Your Honor. Then we have a problem. Tom Davidson stood from the gallery. Your Honor, may I speak? Who are you? Tom Davidson, local rancher and neighbor. I've known Henderson for 20 years. I've also watched what Nelson's done with Mike these past weeks. He looked at Henderson. You called that bull dangerous, uncontrollable. Said he attacked you, but I've seen him with Nelson. Calm, cooperative, willing. The problem wasn't Mike. It was how he was treated. Henderson's face reddened. That bull cost me thousands in damaged equipment. Because you tried to break something that needed understanding, Tom interrupted. Nelson proved that. And if you take Mike back, you'll either try to break him again or sell him to someone who will. The judge considered. Mr. Henderson, would you accept compensation for the bull at a reduced rate, considering his documented behavioral issues under your care? He's worth $15,000. He's worth that to someone who can handle him. You clearly couldn't. I'm offering you a chance to recoup some investment. Take it or risk a formal animal cruelty investigation. Henderson's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. Finally, Henderson nodded. $5,000. Final offer. Nelson's heart sank. He didn't have $5,000 either. I'll pay it, Caroline spoke up. Consider it research funding. Mike's cognitive abilities warrant continued study in his current environment where he's thriving. That's highly irregular, the judge said, but Nelson saw a slight smile. However, if both parties agree to the sale, Henderson grabbed the offer. Fine, $5,000, and he's Porter's problem. Judge Rivers banged her gavel. Sold. Mr. Porter, Mike is legally yours. Dr. Bennett, I expect regular research updates. And Mr. Henderson, consider yourself fortunate you're leaving this courtroom without animal cruelty charges. Outside, Nelson couldn't speak. Caroline smiled. Consider it an investment in groundbreaking research. Besides, Mike's already taught me more than any lab animal ever could. Tom clapped Nelson's shoulder. You did good, friend. That bull found the right person. Nelson drove home in stunned silence. When he arrived, Mike was waiting at the fence, like he knew somehow that everything had changed. You're mine now, Nelson said, voice thick. Legally, officially, nobody can take you away. Mike approached, rested his massive head against Nelson's chest, a gesture of trust, of gratitude, of connection that transcended species. Nelson closed his eyes, feeling the weight and warmth of this extraordinary being. No, that's wrong. You're not mine. We're partners. Equals. That's how this works. As sunset painted Texas gold, man and bull stood together, two beings who'd been abandoned, misunderstood, left behind, who'd found in each other something the world told them was impossible. Understanding, respect, family. 6 months later, Nelson's ranch had transformed into something unprecedented. Not a research facility, not a sanctuary, but a living proof that intelligence deserved respect, not control. Caroline's published research made international headlines. Cognitive Capabilities in Bos Taurus, a case study, appeared in 3 major journals. Universities requested visits. Documentary filmmakers called daily. But Nelson kept Mike's life as normal as possible. Grazing, routines, partnership. Mike now helped around the ranch in ways that astonished visitors. He'd learned to open specific gates on command, move equipment carefully, even alert Nelson to fence damage or sick cattle. Not trained behaviors, collaborative problem solving. Rachel visited from Detroit, finally understanding. She watched Mike gently interact with her father, saw the peace in Nelson's eyes that had been missing since her mother's passing. He saved you, didn't he? She said softly. We saved each other. Nelson scratched Mike's neck. I was disappearing into grief. He was being punished for being extraordinary. Somehow we found exactly what we needed. Tom brought other ranchers now, not to gawk, but to learn. Maybe we've been doing this wrong for generations, one old-timer admitted, watching Mike demonstrate a gate mechanism. Treating intelligence like defiance instead of gift, Henderson had disappeared back to Oklahoma. The bank sold his foreclosed property to a young couple who planted gardens Mike occasionally visited, always careful not to damage plants. They left him vegetables by the fence, neighbors, not owners. One evening, as stars emerged over Texas, Nelson sat on his porch with Mike resting nearby. He pulled out his phone, opened a voice memo to Rebecca, something he'd started after she passed. Rebecca, I found him. Or he found me. Either way, you were right. I do understand hearts. Just needed to meet someone who spoke a different language. He paused. Mike taught me that intelligence isn't about control or domination. It's about recognition. Seeing another mind and saying, I respect what you are. Mike's ear twitched, listening as always. Caroline's latest email glowed on Nelson's screen. 3 other cases of exceptional bovine intelligence reported after our research. We're changing how the industry sees these animals. Mike started a revolution, but for Nelson, it was simpler than revolution. It was about one abandoned bull and one grieving man who proved that connection transcends species when you stop trying to control and start trying to understand. Mike stood, walked to the fence, looked out over the land that was now his home. Not property, not livestock. A being with thoughts, feelings, intelligence that deserved recognition. Nelson joined him, rested his hand on Mike's shoulder. Thank you for teaching me what I'd forgotten, that the most important things in life can't be controlled. They can only be respected, protected, and loved. As night settled over Texas, man and bull stood together under infinite stars. 2 souls who'd been discarded by a world that didn't understand them, who'd found in each other proof that intelligence, in any form, deserved dignity. The problem was never the bull. It never had been. A bull too intelligent to control was discarded, until one man saw the problem was never the bull.